الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. I really apologize for the long delay. We had an appointment in the University of Dar es Salaam. We were on time there, and we started the meeting on time without any delay. But it seemed that the traffic jam probably stopped us reaching on time here. We have now about 20 minutes, am I right? 20 minutes almost. I think it was 20 years back when I had the experience of tabligh in some southwest provinces of Iran. There, I remember it was the month of Muharram. I went there from the city of Qom. And in Qom, we have big hawza, many majalis. There in that city, I don't mention the city because I want to say something a bit negative about it. So in that city, every day we were hearing of some karamat, something like a mu'jiza, something very miraculous incidents happening in this and that majlis. We had students in the class. One day, a student came to me saying that my mother cooked some soup for Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Then he saw the sign of a hand, and then the next day someone was healed. The next day someone. So I was curious, what is going on? We believe that Imam Hussain alayhi salam does miracles, okay? I mean, not miracle in the sense a prophet does, but we know the imams, not only imams, the noble people also that have that extraordinary abilities, but it is not something done so frequently and ordinarily in the society. Then I realized that had been mixed with some superstitious, I can say, thinking of religion. So some people took some very ordinary examples as a case of miracle. They exaggerated about what they saw, and it fostered a sort of thinking about Imam Hussain alayhi salam and about Ahlul Bayt in general. And I was a bit worried because I said, now that this mentality is growing, I'm afraid that one day a backlash will happen. When you go to one extreme, then you should expect a counter wave to come back. And it really happened in some parts of that city or that province. We saw Wahhabism growing. Wahhabism, you see, in all corners of the globe, they are active. They try also to brainwash the youth, even in the Shia world. They were not that successful in, for example, the city of Qom, but they were successful there because they found that now that some people had gone so deep in that extreme way of thinking about Imam Hussain alayhi salam, so now is the right time to make a shift now. So those who are without reasoning, without intellectual understanding of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, those who go to that extreme, they are prone to some, we can say, very opposite views. So you should not be surprised to see at the end of the day a person who was talking so passionately Imam Hussain alayhi salam, then you see him now in a totally different view. We always have to keep the balance. The subject of our talk today is not Imam Hussain alayhi salam or Wahhabism, but that was an example. In the way we train our children also, we have to keep that balance. Sometimes I see in the very religious and committed communities, the way we treat our children may end in some, we can say, opposite reactions if we don't keep the balance. And the same thing may happen in regular communities. So something opposite that may happen. If you look at ISIS, Daesh, you see there were some children from the West, those who have lived in the most liberal environment, they joined ISIS. Some of them, for some, I don't say for all, for some of them that was a reaction to the extremely liberal environment in which they lived. They wanted to rebel against that. And they found it in ISIS. Something vice versa may happen in religious and committed societies. If I want to train my kid in a very pious and religious way, if I put much force more than the balanced way, then it may end in something which is not favored. It may happen that my son, who always accompanies me when I go to the mosque, and I think that he's following me and he has the same ideology that I have, but one day I see, oh, he's a total in it. When he goes to the university and now he comes back home, even the hairstyle, the way of thinking, everything has changed. Some of that may be the result of some excessive, probably, push from my side. Here sometimes, because I just want to mention some few points. The time is short and I was also late. And in one, even if it was 45 minutes, it is not possible to cover the subject of training children or upbringing in an overall manner. I just took few points to emphasize. And indeed, I'm not an expert in that regard. Family issues, we have, alhamdulillah, right now we have some scholars who are working on that very professionally. They give counseling. Alhamdulillah, probably 20 years back we didn't have much, but there are some. I'm not one of them. But I just took some few points to highlight it. Sometimes I remember 5 or 7 years back, I was in some masajid, and I saw some little kids. They have come with parents to the masjid. I was so happy. But then afterwards, I realized that some of them were forced to come to the mosque. And they did not want, even some of them wanted to sleep at home. They were so drowsy. I see the face, you see it. It's just, but by force, they have been brought to the mosque, and they wanted to play, but they were silenced. Hush, sit down here, just listen to the sheikh, listen to imam. I don't know if it is going on still the same way or not, but what we have in our ahadith is that up to the age of 7, Sayyidun Sab'a Sinin, we have to keep that balance. We have to realize the age of the children. So if it is less than 7, we should let him play, let her play, not to force him. Okay, I have to invite him to the mosque. I have to make it something interesting and joyful for him. And there are ways, methods. I don't say that forget about bringing the children to the mosque. No, indeed, I take my own children to the mosque. But my children under 7, I never tell them that you have to come with me to the mosque. I say, indeed, they are the ones who request me to let them come with me. I go to the mosque, and kids at that age, they want to go out. They are not going to the school. They see that their siblings going to the school. They want to go somewhere. So they say, could you please take me? And this is good. And sometimes to give him some candy is something to encourage him or her to come to the mosque. That is good for that age. But I want to teach him, to train him in the same way I was trained. Okay, don't hurry. Put it in its right time. So there is not so many ahadith in the field of training children. We have quite a number, but the important thing is to implement these ahadith. This one single hadith, Sayyidun sab'a sinin, Abdun sab'a sinin, Wazirun sab'a sinin. I'm sure most or all have heard of this hadith. But just take a moment, a minute, and think, how much did I practice this hadith in my own life? Do I make any difference between the ages of my children, whether it is 7 or 10 or 15? Or I try to treat all of them the same way? Sometimes I see parents forcing their children to learn something, to learn language, to learn Quran, to memorize Quran. If it's less than 7 years old, don't force. You see, that the child at that age will feel that he's put in a prison. When you force on him or her to learn something, oh, my nephew now is reciting Quran, he knows so many surahs by heart, why my son does not know anything? Then I push him. It's good to encourage him, but not to force him. Or when it comes to education, I want my son to be number one, so from 5 years old, 6 years old, I start sending him, I don't know, to some schools or some places to teach him many things. I start teaching, alphabet and writing, reading, many things in advance. But it's not that helpful according to this hadith. So this is now I come to the second stage. That is the second 7 years old. 7 years old. Now in the second stage, there are many families today, including my own colleagues, my sheikhs, some sheikhs I see, the way they treat their children, now that they have opened their minds, they have changed their attitude from the previous generation. Now they say we have to give freedom to our children. We have to let them play. So even if the son or daughter is 10 years old, you don't see any sort of obedience in the child. So there is nothing, no command comes from the parents. And the parents, they see, if they command, if they order something, it is against the requirements of the time. Now we are living in 21st century. We have to live in a modern way. So even if I'm a committed religious person, I try just to talk to my children about religion, to enlighten them, but not to tell them what to do or what not to do. Many parents, they say, I leave it to my children to decide where to start praying, where to start fasting. If I see something wrong in them, I will just talk to them. I will explain to them the harms. It's good, but is that enough? And is that in accordance to what we learned from the hadith? God knows the psychological order and setting of our souls much better than the psychologists. And even the psychologists, I'm not sure if they disagree with what this hadith says. We need to make this a part of the personality of our children, to learn how to obey. It's important. Obedience is something that is needed. You may say, oh, it's a very tough stance coming from very traditional sheikhs. But I think that obedience is something that is disappearing. The spirit of obedience is disappearing in some societies, in some communities. Look at the West. In the West, the spirit of obedience has disappeared for a long time. Not only they do not have the feeling to obey their parents or teachers, even to obey God. I'm not talking about Muslims. It's very easy to talk even in an insulting manner against God. So even a European Christian does not feel that much hurt when someone talks very bad against Christ. now they are used to, I can say, this culture. If you go to France, the way they define freedom is so strange. I mean, even to talk, to use a language of profanity against God, against Jesus Christ, is something acceptable. And when you trace it back in the history of Europe, you will find that it has come through stages. So I remember, let me give an example. I remember in Lebanon, I met an American lady who had converted from Christianity to Islam, and we had a meeting. There we talked about the relation between parents and children, and between a teacher and a student. You know, we have many traditions. We have etiquette, certain etiquette, how to treat your teacher. But for her, it was really difficult to digest it. So I don't understand. Why should I stand up when the teacher comes in? Why should I stand up when the father comes in? Just to show respect. It was something strange for her. Said it's a sort of segregation. It is discrimination. He is a human and I'm a human. And we are all equal. Though this woman had been attracted to many teachings of Islam, but still it was something difficult. Though if you go back to the history of Europe, in Christianity also they had these customs. And this is not a matter of Islam or Christianity. Generally, the spirit of obedience has died down. The children do not learn to obey at all in that environment. I need to train my children. I need to start somewhere to teach him or her that you need to obey a superior. We always teach them that Islam is something rational, it has intellectual basis, and that's true. That's true. But should we condition obedience to knowing all the reasons? This is a mistake. Some say, okay, I obey God as long as I am rationally convinced that this is the right path. Right? For proving existence of God, for proving truthfulness of the Prophet, you have to go through the intellectual process. If you have any doubt, you have to stop, you have to ask, you have to inquire. That's right. But once you reach certainty that this is the true path, but there is one particular ruling, I don't know why I should pray qasr prayer when I travel, although I travel with plane, and it's so easy. In the past it was difficult, now it's easy. So I have to pray tamam, not qasr. So you see, this is something that my mind now, see, I'm not convinced, I'm not rationally convinced. Why should I do that? So now, should I stop praying qasr and say, oh, I pray full? Because I don't know the reason. I don't know the reason, but I know there must be some reason. Now, the spirit of obedience, al-ubudiyya, shows itself. If I have established in my soul the foundation of obedience, then I will follow God, although I don't know the reason behind this particular ruling. But those who have not established this foundation in their souls, and this is a very essential element in one's perfection, one's spiritual perfection, to establish that obedience in his soul, then he will stop. He will not follow, and there are many rulings that we see today. You have some people say, I'm religious, but I don't know why this particular ruling is there. I don't follow this particular one. نُؤْمِنُ بِبَعْضٍ وَنَكْفُرُ بِبَعْضٍ. This mentality existed in Bani Israel. They said, we believe in you, Musa. You are the prophet of God. We believe. But what you brought from God, some of that we agree with, some others we don't agree with. They did not have the spirit of obedience. Indeed, Bani Israel, they had much knowledge. The knowledge was good. فَضَّلْتُكُمْ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. God has made them superior to all nations in the time, at that time. God had honored them with sending the maximum number of prophets. But something that they lacked was obedience. And I should start establishing this foundation in the souls of my family from that early age. So this is a golden time for me from 7 to 14 to make sure that it is established. Otherwise, in the future, it will be late. Sorry, the time is over. I had some other points to, yes. 5 minutes? Thank you. I have prepared for a longer talk, but now that I just select some scattered points. One thing that now that I should not be angry with my children. When I say to establish the soul of, and to build the soul of obedience, I don't mean to treat him in a harsh manner and with an angry face. No. Yes, abdun sab'a sinin. We have in the hadith that like slaves. But how did Imam Brother alayhi salam treated his slaves? Don't think of those angry masters. Think of Imam Brother alayhi salam. Think of the Holy Prophet, the way they treat. You said they did indeed command their inferior, those who were somehow subordinate to them, but in a very respectful manner. So respect must be there. I don't mean to be angry with them, to treat them as you are, for example, the commander of an army and they are their soldiers. No, but make sure that you are telling them you have to pray. My son, it's time to pray. Let's go pray. Don't say, do you like, you see, it's good to start with that, but if it didn't work, finally we have to tell them now, it's time for prayer. And it should be made clear now for this age. I'm saying the second stage. Sometimes we need to say indirectly. There are some manners that we need to teach our children. If I say directly, it may not work that much. Mother and father, they should exchange roles. So, for example, now we have in a hadith that one of the manners is that the children should not walk in front of the father. The way when they go somewhere, it's better that they walk behind. But the son does not know. Okay, the mother tells him, oh, it's better to walk behind. You see, if there is something with the father, the mother should take this role, and vice versa. One day the father finds the son shouting in front of the mother. We have in the hadith, لا ترفع صوتك فوق أصواتهما. Don't raise your voice above their voices. Now, the mother should not say anything. The father should find a lonely place and tells his son, oh, don't raise your voice. It's not good in front of your mother. See, each one should make recommendations concerning the other one. And sometimes we have to teach our children through words, sometimes through actions. And so sometimes by saying something, sometimes by doing something, and sometimes by not saying something. Silence also is an instrument of teaching. I don't know how much our children see us praying and supplicating and crying. See, I read Quran, but do I read Quran and think about the content and sometimes make myself, you see, sometimes it needs, I have to concentrate to remember the meaning and to if it is something about the Day of Judgment, if I concentrate on that, the tears may come. So my little children also, they need to see that. I don't need to tell them that you have to read this way. They should see me reciting dua of Kumail and weeping. It is not riyah here. They must learn this not by words, by action. Unfortunately, many of us, we have distanced ourselves in terms of these worshipings from our children. So they don't see us and they don't feel that spiritual pleasure. Now they are prone to the toxic culture of the West. There must have some replacement. If they have already felt the spiritual pleasure, then they can compare it with the material pleasure. So someone who has no experience of spiritual pleasure is very prone to these deficiencies, harms. Sometimes, but not saying something is important. There are some, we can make a culture. For example, there are some issues. I see my father never utters this word even in front of us. Now you see, unfortunately, about sexual matters and this poisonous, I can say, culture that is coming to our societies very fast. Homosexuality, gender fluidity, many things, many things. Sometimes, I may say, I should talk to my children about this issue. Be careful. Sometimes you can leave it to a teacher, but the parents may need to keep silence so that the son says, oh, my father never says this word in the family. He get this idea. It's something very disgraceful. You know, there are some terms that are rude, can consider rude. We never utter them. We never pronounce them. It gives a culture. It creates a culture. We should keep it. Sometimes I see even religious families do not care much about these matters. They freely and openly explain about everything. And while the environment between the parents and children must have some borders, I think. Thank you very much. Sorry for taking your time, and I really apologize again for the long delay. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.